You know, today's a big day. It's an exciting day. It's a fun day. It's a nerve-wracking day. We've spent days and hours with our facilities action team putting together tons and tons of work. We've brought bits and pieces to you, but any time you take a risk, it always is nerve-wracking to see the results. So today, if you haven't been home, and I bet some of you haven't, because maybe it's right from the work site, I think about 20,000 newspapers went out today, and so our community is absolutely saturated with, can you help us? And that's really a cool place to be, is to ask our community to truly be involved in public opinion survey. So if you haven't seen it yet, we do have copies here, and I think they'll probably give you copies in a bit, but it's just a big day for us. It's something that we look forward to for a long, long time, hoping that people will get involved and really be a part of what we're trying to accomplish. So part of my welcome included the opportunity to give you a response to your homework. You asked us a bunch of questions last time, and we analyzed it, and we coded it into a couple of broad categories. And I would like to, what I would suggest is, for the first time, our cabinet has met together to answer your questions and give you our, what I'm going to call, our expert opinion on some things. And I know throughout this process, a lot of people have said, when are you going to speak up? When's your admin or your administrative team going to weigh in? And it's tonight. Now, you need to know, we're not going to give preferences, but what we're going to do is we're going to talk and answer your questions, because that's going to be a really important part of the evening. So, how did we determine how we'd answer questions? Most of the questions that you all asked, I believe, was under the category of option differentiation. Okay, what does that mean? To us, it means that when we review the questions as a collective group, we look through the lens of, does the question help you better understand, or maybe even more clearly figure out, the difference between one option to the second option to the third option and so forth. And when possible, we're going to call out the differences. So the first broad category of your question homework was under enrollment. The response that we have here is that the district needs facilities for at least 1,600 students. That's come to be kind of common understanding of the groups. And this can be accommodated in a 1 or 2 high school design. Our team, I have some of them in the room. Put your hand up if you're part of what I'm calling my team. Okay? Some of my team is over at the other side too. We have 2 meetings going on. But these folks, we all got together and said, with the 4 options, can we make all 4 work? The answer is yes. All 4 options can work. The 4 designs can be managed for 10 plus years utilizing various small learning communities. Sometimes we look to differentiate by, could my plan give us better experience or a better setup for future generations or future communities? It's our expert opinion that with some innovation, all 4 options can be managed for the future 10 plus years. There are some that are easier than others, but all of them could fit. The other thing that we talked about, and I think you as a group have probably thought about, is Shakopee is a very unique suburb. And for that uniqueness, we are very grateful as school leaders. And the designs that we create need to reflect that. And I'm going to talk about that. How are we different than a lot of these schools that we think are pretty darn good? So on the bottom here, this is where Shakopee is at for the number of students on free or reduced lunch. So what does that really mean? Free and reduced is a socioeconomic indicator. So if a student gets the aid, so to speak, they can eat a free or reduced lunch. That that this indicator, best practice has taught us, that this is one of the most powerful indicators in schools who need to apply more resources to help make the playing field equal. Okay? So what I would want you to look at, we have Shakopee, Prior Lake, Stillwater, Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, Wayzata, and Diamond. Besides being excellent school districts, what else do they have in common? Yeah, one high school. So it's important to know, the last time we were doing this process, we stood up in front and we talked about 2 high schools as the preferred model. I think it's also important you know we're checking our bias at the door, because throughout this process we've learned a lot of things and we've kept an open mind and flexibility. So one of the things we want to show you is that as you consider a one large high school, and we're trying to avoid the term mega because it offends some people, so we're going to try and use large or extra large. How do these schools, I don't know which one's better. Nothing in my world extra large is large. Always double or triple. Maybe it's triple extra large. This is a wonderful gift, because when you think of moving the bar of achievement, there's this extra special thing that if you ask your principals about, when you make a difference in the life of a kid from poverty, you've really substantially raised the bar for not only that kid, but his or her family, their families. It's a big, big deal. So we're not saying it's a bad thing to have some free and reduced lunch in our world right now. In fact, I think we'd all be surprised at how the bar is set for how many families actually qualify for free and reduced. It's our society now. We've gone through that recession and everything, so we want to talk about that. Here's the other thing. We are different in the number of minority students. Now, let me start out by saying we're grateful for that. I can't believe how many people over our homecoming week, our Hall of Fame inductees said, "Thank goodness Shakopee finally looks like the rest of the world." And it's a beautiful thing. But I will also add that as a society, and for sure public education, we have done a very poor job of raising the bar for all students. We know there is an achievement gap for our black students, our Hispanic students, and so on and so forth. And when you have a higher percentage, you have a lot of work to do. That involves heavy lifting. We're not going to ignore that. We have to call that out. We have to say we're grateful, but it involves a lot of heavy lifting. Now, this one was asked last week too. So this is under operational costs and taxes. Operational costs are determined by the number of kids, the butts in the seats, how many kids we have enrolled, and square footage formula. So the 4 options that we're looking at, your cabinet, my cabinet, our district admin, have determined there isn't a significant difference with any one of those plans. Here's why. Enrollment drives the staffing, square footage drives operations. So if you take our current high school, our operational costs annually, $11,700,000. How is that broken out? With total staffing, $10.6 million. That's our current site. And that's about 1.1 if you throw in maintenance, utilities, stuff like that. So if you add 1,600 square feet, from a utility standpoint, it is what it is. And with the enrollment, you take X number of students per teacher, per para, per cook, per custodian, and you apply that formula. So it's enrollment driven. So none of these 4 options, we didn't see it as option differentiation issue. Okay? Now, the caveat here is, we could get in the weeds here and say, well, you know, does one require does one model have 2 principals? And what we thought about as a cabinet, if you start getting to that level of detail, you're probably into the what ifs and yeah buts. Because someone would say, well, gee, if you have two campuses, you have to have two head principals. Or do you have one head principal and 4 assistant principals, or 2 assistant principals? And it is what we determine it is. We do that based on student enrollment. So a lot of the intangibles, we get to decide as a school how we staff those buildings. But from a differentiation point, all 4 options that are brought forward, not a significant difference. Here's one too that is not what I would call school board approved. This is cabinet speaking. It's my district administrators. The technology plan that you have and the academic redesign that you have, with that, the district will have operational increases that will require voter approval from operational or capital funds. Simply put, we firmly believe that we will, again, not school board approved, this is your, we did it homework as administration. We will need to up our operational budget by asking you to support the operational budget. Okay? Not referendum is building, but operationally, you can expect that if we're going to be doing the things we say we're going to do, it could, and we're saying would, increase taxes from an operational standpoint. Where are we at? If we're talking about, hey, we might make some changes, are we already overdoing it? Well, I think this is kind of telltale, and I want to tell you, spending money in schools doesn't guarantee results. Spending does not equal results. It's what you do with it. So here's Shakopee at $724 per pupil spending. If you ask the teachers or administrators in the room per pupil, what would you do in the classroom if you were like these people and you would get that kind of change? I think Mike was at $8 million a year. Yeah. What would we do with $8 more million into our classrooms, directly putting it into classrooms? Again, those are questions and things that we'll have to decide as a community to what extent, because there's only so much money to go around. So we have to make some choices. I wouldn't want you to hear that we're suggesting we go from here to here, but we are. I wouldn't be unemployed tomorrow. But I am suggesting that I think there's some happy medium that we have to talk about as a community. Perceptions, under the bracket of homework questions. Up to this point, it's very important as members who serve on this committee and on the other committee, you have not heard a school board member or an administrator leading for direction. They have not given preference, they have not given 1 is better than 3, and et cetera, et cetera. It is really important to know that the newspaper that went out today, that is 100% driven off of a very large and important group of people who struggled and worked hard. That is not your district trying to ramrod anything, okay? Another perception. There is I think the question was something like, you know, the community last time said that they didn't want 2 high schools forever, all right? Well, there is that perception out there. Here is off we call it our exit, the survey.
Autopsy.
Autopsy, there you go. We do an autopsy survey. You can see the reasons people said for not supporting. There's a ton of reasons. There is a ton of reasons why people didn't support. In fact, I think you could see most people probably didn't have just one. They had probably many different reasons. So our team, our district administrators, as we look at options, it would not be fair to say that there is only one reason why something didn't go. We are acknowledging there are multiple reasons why it didn't go. Then, under the bracket of, we don't know a lot about this whole 2 campus, 1 mascot concept, so we brainstormed. Since there isn't another model right now like it, what would we do with it? So a couple thoughts were, Each campus might have core classes that are the same, and then different electives on each campus. Okay, so that might be a real simplified way of dealing with it. Student interest drives course scheduling. So kids will pick the classes they want, and that's how we schedule. I mean, you probably knew that already, but it's totally up to the students. We get to choose what we offer, but they get to choose what they pick is who we hire for teachers. And then classes being offered on one or both campuses, if 20 kids wanted AP Physics, and we didn't have a need for the two campuses to have both of those classes, probably wouldn't have to do it. Or if our numbers were down in a program, wouldn't necessarily have to have both those kinds of things at both campuses. It wouldn't be required to do that. Continuing on the same concept, our counselors and administration manage schedules. If we were challenged to create this two-campus approach, they would work together to minimize the number of times people go back and forth. For example, they would explore perhaps a college-type schedule. So it could be that a student could go to school at the AM or the PM. It could be that the students could do like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes, and then a different schedule for Tuesday, Thursdays, kind of like you would do if you were back in your college days. Does that make sense? That we could try to schedule like that. You can see that, you can understand there could be some complications clearly. We don't have all the answers yet. Co-oping sports and activities, I think that's kind of the general assumption that if we have two campuses, one mascot, you'd have people co-op together no matter what building you went to. And then the longer passing times, if you truly are going to allow for perhaps one switch a day, I mean, in your head, when you first think about it, it's like, okay, is that like 6 or 5 backboard? That wouldn't make sense to any of us on the cabinet. We didn't see that, but maybe once, maybe back and forth once. We were trying to think of how this option could work. We weren't negative on it. I would want you to know that. It's just that when you don't know what it looks like, it's a little scary. Creates a little anxiety. But we said, could we do it? Yes. And then there are questions about the academic and technology team. In fact, you're going to do table talk today. Our staff are currently on all these implementation teams, and it's on the board approved recommendations, and they're working really hard at redesign. There's going to be a parent survey coming out soon asking what your expectations are for your students. We're going to interview the students and ask the students what's your expectations for your life and your career. And then we're going to work with the board to make sure that we're giving our community what they need for coursework. Same will be true in elementary. We're designing a backward design. We're starting at the 6 through 12. But we are gearing up for the elementary and early childhood to make sure we have alignment and consistency and those kinds of things. So that's my welcome and homework. We are around too. When you do table talk, if you want us to pull up a chair and visit with you, any of these people are, because we did it together, any of the people here, our administrators and our board are here, many of our board are here. We're happy to answer any questions, which we always have. Questions before we move to the next piece?